Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the City Infrastructure Committee meeting of 8 September 2020. I declare this meeting open at 9:24 a.m. I'd like to advise meeting attendees that this meeting is being audio recorded. And I would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, let's move on. Do any councillors have a leave of absence to declare? All the seats are taken. There's no leave of absence. I'm taking my time today for those people listening because we've got a new person taking the minutes and it's their first time, so welcome, Jess. Item 4.1. I refer to item 4.1. Can the Road and Infrastructure Planning Manager, Mr. Ranawira, please enter the discussions? But before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? There being none, I now refer to the Manager to open public discussion. Mr. Ranawira, you may proceed.
Good morning, councillors. Yes, this is about the M1 upgrades or PAC motorway upgrades. TMR has opened consultation with the residents now for the Section 3A, as they refer, and that upgrade is from Springwood to Logan Lee. Now that's open now. From this report, we are trying to figure out what feedback we are going to give back to the TMR. If I may talk to the sections that stages that they are referring to, stage 1 is M1, M3 gateway merge, which they have already completed in last May. Stage 2 is 8 Mile Plains to Daisy Hill Road, which is in various stages of project development now. Stage 3 is Daisy Hill to Logan Motorway. So they are going to deliver the stage 3 in two sections. Stage 3A is Logan Road to Logan Lee Road, and stage 3B is Logan Lee Road to Motorway. So stage 3A is the discussion here. That is the TMR's communications so far is really high level. They have published map at concept level, which is attached in page number, can't see the page, 8. You can see that as part of that project, Springwood to Logan Lee, there will be a SEQ busway extension. And that's the addition that they had later on done. Also, there will be widening of the motorway. I think the indication is 5 lanes maximum each way. And also there will be some rationalization of the on-ramps and off-ramps. What we would like to know is what would be the impact by this inclusion of the busway. We welcome the inclusion of busway. Of course, council always lobbied that we need to extend the busway to Hyperdome at least. So we did that in the past. But we need to know the impacts, especially in Springwood Centre, Springwood area. And we believe that this could impact on the service road of the Springwood, and that could cause some property impacts as well. Not only that, by doing this, there will be some alterations to the on-ramp and off-ramps, especially Chadsworth Road. Then I think the on-ramp would be to Paradise Road, off-ramp would be to Paradise Road. So that could change the local traffic as well. What we are asking at this stage is give feedback at a very high level, saying we need to know the impacts of doing this. So the recommendation is there based on that at a very high level. So that's probably it from me.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bradley, you had a question?
Yeah, normally, thank you through the chair. Previously, Kamal, we've had briefings from TMR and it's usually in a confidential way, in that they disclose possibly a lot more of where their thoughts and are going, and where the likely impacts will be. And this is of great concern to me, particularly knowing that, for example, I've recently asked for a report about Springwood Town Square, and I'm lobbying state candidates at the moment about that. And it also impacts the Springwood local plan, which still hasn't gone to the state government for endorsement and then back out to the community for consultation. We've been waiting for years and years and years for that. And so it actually impacts the whole city quite adversely by all these hold-ups, because supposedly Springwood is, you know, the next CBD. It's been bantered around for a while, and it is an economic hub that helps support the rest of the city grow. So I think at the very least we should be asking TMR to come in here and have those discussions with us, so we can give really frank feedback rather than, and I respect what you have written here, Kamal, but I would like to give more feedback than that. I would like to give more detailed feedback, because it is going to impact that whole area for a very, very long time. Even if it is, they don't, you know, it could very well change the whole network, road network in Springwood. It could make, for example, Cinderella Drive the main road rather than the service road that is at, you know, it could very well make Barbarella Drive a main road. It is a real concern. So I think at the very least we need to get TMR in here.
So,
And I would like to add that to the recommendation.
Would you like to respond to that? Or?
yes, I think you're right. We need to, if we can get TMR to information session to the council, that would be really good. That can be added to the recommendation.
Just to add on to that, Paradise Road is one of the major thoroughfares for people coming through from my division and Councillor Russell's division to the M1, and any adjustments to that would have a significant impact on our local areas, so that would be really appreciated. Are there any other councillors who have a question for the manager on this issue? Do you have any? Oh, pardon me. Thank you. I'll now, is there a mover for the motion on item 4.1? You'd like to amend it? Okay. Got to keep up. Councillor Raven.
Madam Chair, in the interest of simplicity, would Councillor Bradley be happy if we had a GB item calling for them to come and do a presentation to us and leave the consultation amendment as it is?
I would like to add it to that, so that it is encapsulated, that we would like request that they come in and give us a briefing, a presentation. There you go. And I'm happy to move that amendment.
Councillor Bradley, can you see the motion on the screen?
Yeah, I'm happy to move it.
That's acceptable. So Councillor Bradley's moved the motion. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Bannon. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Just keep them in the air until it's recorded. That's unanimous. The motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so on to item 4.2, renaming of a section Bush Tucker Road, Berrinba. I refer to item 4.2. Before we open the discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? There being none, I refer to the Road Infrastructure Planning Manager to open discussion. Mr. Renawira, you may proceed.
Okay. This item was raised by the local councillor and the deputy mayor because some of the constituents have raised concerns about confusing nature of road names there. This is in Berimba. The easiest way for me to explain this is to go to the plan that attached to the report, which is in page number 11, I believe. If you look at the plan, there is a shaded section of roads, and that shaded sections are the roads that we need to do some renaming. So in blue, you will see the current name of the road, and in orange, you will see the proposed names. So what has happened here is, if you can see at the left side, 6th Avenue, a small portion of 6th Avenue is there. If you can't see this, but if you go towards the west of Cedarwood Street, there is another 6th Avenue as well. So this is confusing that little portion of 6th Avenue. And then Bush Tucker Road, which actually starts north-south, but it then turns from 6th Avenue and goes along the motorway as well. So it's a long road, in other words. So for that reason, people are a bit confused. So what we did was we came up with a scheme, road naming scheme. That road naming scheme indicates that from 8-Foot Avenue to Domio Road, the Bush Tucker Road will be named as Geranium Street. But then 8-Foot Avenue then will extend until it meets Cedarwood Street. So that's the proposal. We sent this, we consulted with 13 affected property owners and residents. So these are not just the property owners, residents as well. We got the consensus, and it equates to about 83%. So we are proposing that road name to go ahead, road name change to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor to councillors for discussion. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm very supportive of the recommendation in the report, and just for councillors' benefit, that Geranium Street is an unmade road, so at the moment it doesn't exist. It may be required for future development of 190 to 200 Bush Tucker Road. What I am disappointed about is the way the consultation was undertaken with this process. This is where we're encountering that the organisation insists on sending out consultation while excluding the councillor. I get referred to as having initiated it. This actually came directly from the election, so it could not be more political if it wanted to be. The organisation had no intention of ever doing this if the councillor didn't raise it, because I'd already done community engagement with the impacted residents. It's very frustrating for the residents and for myself when I'm the one who initiates the request, the residents are the one who raised it with me, and then when we go to actually deliver on the outcome, council decides that the administration are the ones who will do the consultation. To add insult to injury, I've received no feedback about what the objections were. The first time that I knew this was coming was when I read my agendas on Sunday afternoon. So if we're going to do community consultation and you get feedback and the councillor initiated it, I don't think it's that much to ask that you actually keep the councillor informed. Do you think that's unreasonable?
Mr. Anawira.
I think the consultation process is going through another process just to get an understanding of what need to be through councillors and what need to be through the officers. If I get that direction, I'll be really happy to go ahead with this sort of consultation. But at the moment, I can tell you some of we get some feedback about their privacy as well. Some of the community groups are saying we don't want to let anyone know about my feedback. That sort of so we need to sort out those things. This is something that we did because this is urgent. It looks urgent, but in future we need to look at a better process, of course.
They've been waiting for like 10 years. This isn't urgent. My problem is that there's two responses received against the change, and I have no idea what their reasons were, but you want me to vote on it today. It wasn't included in the report, and when we do a planning process, DA always includes all responses from residents when they make objections and decisions in favour, and the reasons for why those are considered or aren't considered. But I expected when I read this report that I would find those responses at the bottom. And if they're confidential because privacy needs to be protected, then the confidentiality that the staff maintain is the exact same confidentiality that councillors maintain. I don't accept that we somehow can't be trusted with confidential or private information, that we're going to leak it, which is the implication when you say that we can't be given it. So how are we made to make a decision today when we don't know what the objections were? What if there is an objection so strong and so powerful that it changes the minds of me or my colleagues?
If you haven't received the feedback, I'm happy to send it back to you. If you haven't already received that, I don't have a problem in doing that.
It would have been good to receive it before we got the agenda, because not only should you consult with the residents as key stakeholders, you should also consult with the councillor as a key stakeholder, don't you think?
Okay, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Bradley, I've got your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hadn't planned to raise this in this forum today, but given the concerns that Councillor Raven has raised, I too have experienced some challenges with regard to name changes of roads in my electorate, and specifically around the area of community consultation. The Director, Kamal and I have spoken offline with regard to this, and I'm hoping that we can resolve this issue before the report comes back to Council with regard to renaming of a section of road along Waterford Tambourine Road. But again, I think that we've got an issue if the councillor has been consulted about the proposed name change, and the direction given by the councillor is to liaise with the community, whether they're satisfied with the name change, if they support it, what their intent would be, only to discover my name was on a letter that went out to those residents saying that I authorised the name change, which I did not. I authorised consultation with the residents with regard to the name change. So I appreciate that we're working through that at the moment, but genuine consultation is required with regard to these kinds of issues, which are very sensitive for a number of residents. And my phone has absolutely rung hot from a clutch of residents who feel very aggrieved that we haven't been operating in an open and transparent fashion with regard to the name change. Kamal, I thank you for pulling that particular report and giving us an opportunity to work with residents to provide an outcome that will suit all, and I look forward to reinitiating this process before a report comes back to Council with name change.
Thank you. Councillor Bannon.
Just in reference with Councillor Raven, where you were saying that there was 2 objections, I know that I've got a road issue which is different to this, but I know that when the community consultation letters went out, they said if you do not respond to the letter, we'll take that as a no. Is that the sort of thing that's happened in this case? Were they just, someone didn't return a letter? Or were these actually people that sent in saying they do not want it to happen because we were going to say no to a road simply because people didn't send a letter back in, which obviously I didn't think was adequate, so I've gone and done my own community consultation. Some people don't send letters back because they don't get the letter or they're just too lazy to do it.
In this,
yes, in this instance with Councillor Raven,
yep.
And you said there was some people, were they actually written objections to it, or were they just someone similar to myself where they just didn't bother writing back?
So if there is no response, that means they are in support of this proposal.
So is that different to the one that I had? Because it said if there was no response, they were not in favour of the proposal when we did the one for mine.
Yeah, I think this is the whole road one you're talking about.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but
yeah. Yeah, I think in that case, I think if we don't get a response, we're saying that you still need to keep the road closed, I think. We can select whatever.
So you do that different each time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Anything else, Councillor?
No, it just doesn't make sense, that's all.
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Look, you all know I'm very passionate about community consultation, and by that I mean consultation with us as well. And in light of what Councillor Raven has said, I would prefer that this be deferred until Council's meeting next week and Councillor Raven be given the opportunity to receive that feedback. We should be trusted with confidential information. That's what we're here to represent, the community, and we are bound by confidentiality, and we have all sorts of codes of conduct and whatever that we have to adhere to. So I think at the very least it is a respectful thing that we defer this so that Councillor Raven has an opportunity to find out that information.
Thanks very much. Mr Renawira, just a question. Has there been a change of policy in relation to how councillors are consulted on local projects at all? Was it different under the last council, or was there a new policy done under the administrator, or how did that work?
I don't think there was a change as such, but there are some councillors who want to do their own consultation as well in the past. And I think now we are trying to figure out how we are going to do that. That's the issue. So as long as if we can find a solution for that, we can move forward.
Right. Director, did you want to say anything?
Yes, through the chair. Obviously, the issue of consultation is one that we are working through, and I am taking some further legal advice in terms of what we can and can't do, and establish a process that meets all requirements. So we will be bringing a briefing note to councillors in the very near future in relation to the consultation processes. And in terms of the naming, we'll review the current policy just to ensure that we can follow the appropriate request, because I think if somebody does object, I'm not sure that there's a necessity for them to state the basis of their objection. So we just need to work through that process, and we'll get back to you with that.
Thank you, Director. I know that Councillor Raven again indicated he had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And they may not have provided a reason, but we haven't been provided that either, so we don't know. There could be a very good motive reason that all councillors would support. We don't know what we don't know, and we shouldn't have to make decisions without the information at hand. That legal advice that you've been waiting for, I think I'm up to about 6 or 8 weeks of waiting on that legal advice. Have you requested it via carrier pigeon, or will it become like the governance framework where we wait 5 quarters to get the legal advice back on something as simple as whether or not a councillor can send a letter on their letterhead instead of the organisation?
We have received advice, and I'm preparing a briefing note at the moment.
Excellent. When can we expect the briefing note? The near future is not a time that I have in my calendar. Can you give me a week? Can you give me a date?
Yeah, well, it will be within the next week or so.
Thank you.
Right. So there's been a motion from Councillor Bradley to defer item 4.2 to Council next week. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Karansky. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them in the air.
It's unanimous.
Just for the listeners at home, we have an L-plater on the minute taking today, so we're just going through the processes. So if people could keep their hands in the air, that would be wonderful. Good, thank you very much, councillors. That marks the end of the Road Infrastructure Planning Manager's reports. Is there any general business for the manager? Manager, do you have any general business for us?
No.
Thank you very much. Okay, I refer to item 5.1. Can the Road Infrastructure Delivery Manager, Mr Riley, please enter the discussions? But before we open the discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? There being none, I now refer to the manager to open public discussion. Mr Riley, you may proceed.
I'll stand up if that's okay. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. The report in front of you is in respect to the 1920 Roads and Drainage Capital Delivery for the year. It provides an overview of what we actually achieved over the last 12 months. Okay. I have a presentation which I'll run through when it's up on the screen to provide some of the overall headlines though. So last year was actually our largest capital delivery we've actually been able to achieve in the roads and drainage space since Logan's inception. We delivered $86 million in infrastructure. Our previous largest record was around 76, so we were about 10 million more than our best previous before that. That infrastructure delivery was split over our rehabilitation of assets, but also over new and upgraded assets that we've provided. So there was about 46 million in new infrastructure that we provided, and about 39 million in infrastructure which was rehabilitated. At that figure of 86, that was a 91% achievement against available funding within the financial year, which is inside the target set by council, which is at 90%. That detail was laid out in the report, so I'll keep moving on. So as a bit of a general overview across the roads group, so that's within RID, which is the branch that I look after, but also with...
Mr Riley, if we can just pause for a moment. We've just got to get the laptops frozen. So.
I do have it on my laptop if that helps. My apologies.
Is it possible that we take a short break, and if that can be sent to councillors, a lot of them have their computers with them, that might be better if we can't get it up on the screen. Would that...
Yep.
It's always in Teresa's committee. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Can someone move that we actually take a break? Councillor Raven, can I have a seconder?
I move that we adjourn for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Raven. Is there a seconder? Yep. Councillor Bradley, thank you very much. All those in favour? So we'll resume at 10:03 a.m. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your patience, everybody. I now move that we reopen the committee meeting. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Stemp. All those in favour? So we have everyone except for Councillor Raven. Thanks very much, councillors. Mr Riley, would you like to continue with your presentation? And thank you very much for that break.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've already pretty much spoken to the first screen. That detail is actually in the report in regards to the overall financial achievement over the last 12 months for 1920. Some of the highlights for the year. So location-wise, between the roads branches, for delivery, which is predominantly RID, and roads construction and maintenance, we were at 600 locations across the city. We delivered about 61 million of the total by external construction contractors, about 16 million by RCM in terms of our own day labour workforce, and about 9 million in regards to our design, project works and service delivery, service relocations with other public utilities companies. We had 25 major contract constructions awarded, about 191 progress payments throughout the year, 2,000 plus site visits to look at our contractors and ensure we're actually in space, over 300 compliance audits, etc. We engaged with the public around 550 times in regards to the delivery of those works. And in an environmental sense, we actually were able to recycle or reuse about 24,000 tonnes of asphalt and existing road gravel. So effectively that's material that we've actually dug out of the ground when we're doing new works out of old roads, and we've been able to recycle that back into new pavements and new works. That's fairly important, especially when we look at how much we actually pay for disposal of material. If we can actually reuse that, while it has a significant environmental impact, it certainly cuts down on the material we need to buy, but there's even a significant cost to us if we actually have to dispose of that material. Across the network, we upgraded 34 further bus stops to be DDA compliant, which is Disability Discrimination Act, which came out in the 1990s. We're working towards a full compliance, I think, within the next 1 to 2 years, and we're well on track towards that. There was about $26 million in upgrades on the trunk road network, about $5 million in upgrade to drainage catchments to actually stop water flooding into residential properties. $6 million on our local road network. We spent about 27 million on rehabilitation of road pavements. That's in excess of 160 streets that we visited and actually did work on. And if we jump to the bottom, we built about 23 kilometres of new footpath and shared cycleway paths across the road network as well. Some of the bigger projects that were delivered in the year just gone. New Beast Stage 3 was completed. That provided significant flood immunity on that road, as well as upgrading the overall alignment. 3rd Avenue in Berrinba saw the extension of 3rd Avenue through to Wembley Road. That completed a major link for council. It actually managed to take the traffic which would be on 3rd Avenue away from Barden Road predominantly, which removes it away from the school in that Berrinba precinct. And provided a better link back there. Certainly looked to support the development that we're seeing in that Berrinba precinct as well. The Station Road and Logan Motorway Jellicoe intersection was a long-awaited improvement, but certainly had significant improvements for that network coming off the Logan Motorway. Master drainage projects completed throughout the year. Diandra Drive catchment, which was in Eagleby, Milne as well, down in Beenleigh, Cammon, Kinloch and Mackellar significantly contributed to that. Our local roads, curb and channel projects is effectively those streets which are local roads which are not to an urban footprint at this point in time. We saw some major improvements in those areas. We saw James Street, which is down in Beenleigh at the front of the showgrounds, which we actually upgraded with curb and channel and drainage and made that appropriate. And Jalen Street down in Tanamira was similar. Upgrades to Nash and Schmidt Road. The project which we actually probably received the most feedback from, and I'd nearly say it was the most positive feedback I've received of any project we've actually delivered from the community, was the actual upgrade to the Red Bridge. The Red Bridge is a cycle connection now, but it was the previous motorway in many decades gone past, connection to the coast. The amount of emails that we received actually talking about reminiscent of their children and, when they were children, and the trips to the coast was amazing. It was a significant upgrade for council. Effectively, every inch of the bridge was gone over with a small hammer, and every defect in the concrete, which was actually deteriorating underneath, was found. Every last inch of that was actually manually removed, and every piece of the concrete was then actually placed by hand in small sections about the size of a marble, actually back in. We will see another 60 years plus out of the bridge, which will be an icon for Logan well into the future. That was the year that was. Looking forward at the year that's coming, so the major construction projects that we will have in 2021, Chambers Flat Road between Mount Lindesay Highway and Kings Way. This project will start when we actually have the land. That land application has been somewhat delayed. The state has, I think, had other things on its mind. We made application around Christmas. We don't have that back yet. As soon as we get that back, that project will commence for us. We are extremely optimistic that we might get it before the government goes into caretaker mode on the 5th of October. Otherwise, we will need to wait. It won't be forthcoming until after the election. Master drainage. The big project for us in this upcoming year is the Woodland Drive catchment. There's multiple stages in there which will be delivered over several years. The first of that's actually started. There was some closures on Priestdale Road as we put new culverts under there. There will be detention there. We've already commenced, but that will roll out over the next couple of years. Doug White Drive, the first stage, which is out at the Parkridge Shopping Centre, is set to start within the next couple of months. We will be building that. There are further 2 stages, which are the connection to Cantina and then the signalisation on Parkridge Road as well. Under our upgrade to local streets which are not to an urban standard, the predominant work in this upcoming year will be out at South Street and some of those adjoining streets. There's the button on here. Up the top you can actually see South Street, Nichols Street, Johns. There is more work there than will be able to be funded within this 12 months alone, so that will actually spread into the subsequent year as well.
Sorry, Mr. Mann. Can I just ask that the gallery please be seated so that we don't hear echoes of people talking, if that's okay?
The Compton Road Cycleway is a project which was jointly funded with the state government. It required additional funding, which was a submission that went back to the state government to be able to complete that. The cost of the bridge to actually get across the Slacks Creek waterway was significant. It was a longer bridge than we thought to actually get the flood immunity on that. We're obviously keen to see that cycleway in before we see the upgrade potentially to the M1 through to the bus station at Springwood, which would be just across the freeway at that location. Most of the rest of that cycleway to get to that point's already in place, so that will actually provide a good connection for us. Scott Lane culvert replacement, which will be replaced with a bridge, is all designed and ready to go. Once again, we're just waiting on some land acquisitions about the same time frame as Chambers Flat Road. Looking forward in the years beyond that, we currently have in design Logan Lee Road, which is 6 laning of Logan Lee Road from the Logan motorway through to the M1. So that will take us from that precinct in at the hospital and make that connection through. We actually have a fly-through on that, which we can run. It only takes a couple of minutes, but it'll give you an idea of the magnitude of that project. So effectively we run from University Drive in the south through to the M1 at the top. It'll see the upgrade to those intersections, and it'll upgrade to 6 lanes or 3 lanes in each direction.
You're welcome.
I feel like I'm parachuting.
Sorry, parachute in, yep. So obviously the connection onto University Drive to the highway is a major connection, so we have 2 stand-up right turn lanes there to actually facilitate that movement. It will see us upgrade the cycleway. There is an existing cycleway on Logan Lee Road on the eastern side, so we will be augmenting that as well so that we actually provide that duplicated on both sides. Obvious U-turn facility to be able to return south, connection to Queens.
Is that right turn into Queens Road extended?
I can't
Looks like
rewind.
it is.
So it runs back over the bridge, which comes as you come down Queens Road. So there's not a lot of pavement material there for us to actually be able to build. And certainly an upgrade to that bridge is not part of this project. Yeah. So there may be some, but it would be limited. Yeah. That's the access into the golf course, or Golf Course Drive.
Need some really cool music to go with this, Daryl.
I did say that.
When DA presents stuff, there's really cool music with their videos. Just saying.
Just save your bragging for your own committee. Thank you, Councillor.
I'll think about it and see how much it costs. Certainly as we get towards this northern end, the part which will be a little bit more complicated for us is actually the connection back to the M1. We have 2 existing bridge structures over Slacks Creek. Actually, I think it's Scrubby Creek, sorry, at this location.
It is.
Scrubby must come in just upstream of that, Slacks. We will need to be able to augment some further lanes onto that bridge, which will be a bit of a challenge for us, but I'm sure we'll figure out a way. And that will improve the connection and the flow onto the M1 as well with the additional lane at that location. That will be a major project for council, obviously, in the upcoming years, so that's beyond 2021. That is already with consultants and is already in design as we speak, though. If we can go back to the presentation. Thank you. The other major project which is coming on in our major roads program is the upgrade to the Freestyle and Rochedale intersection. So at the moment we're looking to finalise the funding between BCC and the federal government. So there is a submission going back to them to resolve that. There will be more information flowing that in the near future. Looking forward at the upcoming program of works across probably the 2 major areas where we actually have upcoming the major projects. So the first of those being the priority infrastructure area. So the priority infrastructure area is the funding which is collected from developers to actually fund trunk infrastructure associated with the priority infrastructure area which is set by the planning department. So that sits across Park Ridge, across into Bars Scrub, and it's around that trunk infrastructure that supports that. So that's the funding which is actually indicated in the local government infrastructure plan and the amounts which were actually allocated there. Beyond the 2 years, the funding's indicative at this stage, but looking at the amounts which are actually allocated in that program, that's how they sit. There's probably, if I run through those, so Station Road in Jellicoe is completed, Daisy Hill Road Cycleway is completed, Doug White Drive, we are in pre-construction. We will have a contractor on site for the first stage of that very shortly, and that will continue. 3rd Avenue Berrinba, which is the 4-laning from Barden Road through to 4th Avenue, is with consultants in design at the moment, and they are working on that. Gilmore Road, Bartherland is completely designed. In our land acquisition projects, which once we get beyond those construction projects, the LGIP only has land acquisition projects left in it at this point. Green Road, Bumstead and Bayliss are all finished to design suitable for us to actually go to land acquisition, so we will be going there shortly. Park Ridge Road is entering into preliminary design shortly. And the last one is Point Corp. So I'm aware most councillors will be across that development. The infrastructure agreement which was signed to that saw that developer receive offsets for their contribution, but also saw the bring forward of some of the priority infrastructure trunk roads which would be in that network. So there's about a $19 million commitment from council to actually finish out that trunk road network in that area. That funding basically against Point Corp therefore extends for another 2 years beyond that, with a further $6 million to actually get to that figure. I know that the councillors have had some discussion around the funding which has been collected from developers and is actually in reserves. This is actually the program where that funding actually comes into council and the projects upon which that funding would actually be constrained to. So that infrastructure charging has to be placed against the local government infrastructure plan, because that's the mechanism by which it was actually collected. As it stands at the moment, the allocation of dollars for the land is based on a state government estimate of costs. That is based on a rating amount. It is fully anticipated that those funding amounts are actually going to be well short of where we actually need to be, so there will need to be a report come back to council at some stage for us to talk about how we change those out. The other amounts which are there are also the preliminary planning, so as they progress to detailed design and we get further information on those amounts will actually be adjusted to match the actual construction costs as well. I think that's the major items on those, but effectively everything which is on the plan is already with consultants, is already in progress for all the works that we will deliver under that program for the next 5 years. The other major one is the priority development infrastructure, which is the infrastructure agreement which we have with EDQ and the developers. They are the funding amounts which are built into council's compares for the next 5 years and the allocation of those against the projects as they sat in the infrastructure agreement is signed. All of the projects on that list are already with consultants and are either in design or designed, with the exception of Chambers Flat. We have done some preliminary design work, sorry, when I say Chambers Flat Road, Kingsway to Kenny, so second from the bottom. We have had a consultant do some preliminary work on that, and that will be progressing into further work in the upcoming months. Effectively, we have everything which is actually out with consultants to be able to have that delivered within that time frame. We're obviously well progressed on Chambers Flat Road, which is the project which will progress in this financial year, pending the land acquisitions. Eddleston Road, we're well progressed on as well, and we will be commencing the finalisation of our corridor there as well within the next few months. The other major project which is further out, but I will be coming back to present to council on, is the Greenbank corridor study, or transport corridor study. We've done a major piece of planning work around what the corridor will actually look like in Goodna Road, the bottom of Middle, the connection to Teviot and Newbeath Road. The predominant item there which we're looking to obviously bring forward is that intersection with Middle Road, Stony Camp and Teviot, and what that intersection will look like. So I'm envisaging to be back to the councillors hopefully before the next committee with some idea of what we've actually received from that. That was a major piece of work undertaken by a consultant for us, probably about 8 months worth of work to actually look at all the options available across all of those corridors. I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much. Mr Mayor.
Yep. Can we just go back to the very first slide?
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Darryl, my first question is adopted budget 94 million, expenditure 86 million. Can you tell me how many projects, basically the $8 million that wasn't spent, was that one project, 2 projects, many projects? How was that?
That's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
More often than not, the way that that expenditure ends up, it ends up around the timing of individual projects. So when we're actually looking at the schedule that we have, we go through and look at every project and how much expenditure we expect to get on every project in every month.
So basically, it's just an overlay of money that was basically spent fairly quickly into the new financial year. So there was a number of projects that hadn't quite spent the allocation of funding, but was quickly evaluating that full expenditure fairly quickly. Number of projects that, like, there wasn't many projects that hadn't started.
There wasn't in that regard. If there was probably 2 projects that we would have liked to have seen started before the end of the financial year but didn't, it would have been Chambers Flat Road and Scott Lane, and it was attached to the land acquisitions.
How much expenditure? How much was that roughly? Just
on those projects, if we look at, say, Chambers Flat Road, we are probably likely to see $1 million a month in expenditure on that. It's a significant project. Scott Lane, we're probably likely to see about $500,000 a month.
I guess my concern is that, can we improve that? That is the thing that I want to see this financial year, is because of the economy, because, you know, there are a lot of people out there that really want to see councils ramp it up.
Yep.
I would hate to think that we have unspent expenditure in this financial year. I would like to see all projects finished and that money spent because the economy needs us. If every local authority does this, then there should be more money out there obviously in the community, and we're doing the state and, of course, Australia be better positioned if we all do that, considering how many local authorities we have. So I was just wondering how we can work on that to make sure that if council allocate funding, that we can get all those projects done in the full financial year.
Yep. Certainly talking to that point, and it really was the purpose of actually bringing the 2 tables in regards to those projects, especially in those major programs, is the point that all of those projects we actually have at consultants and we're actually progressing as quickly as we can. So to that extent, we've been very mindful. We've put a lot more time and effort probably over the last 12 months in developing our project development capability and making sure that we actually have that work out and actually with consultants. So of our overall design program, we do about 1/3 in-house and we do about 2/3 by contract. By consultants. Those consultants vary from consultants that we pick up off local buy, which is a process we do around that, but we also use the existing Logan Water Alliance as well as a consultant in that space as well. So some of the works that we have designed, we actually put through that process. They're a service that we can use as well. The real focus for us has been on trying to get that work further ahead and actually ensuring, as I said, that we've got 5 years actually out. I'd like to say that I'm certain that will turn it around within this 12 months. I'm probably worried that it might take 2 years. So I'll be upfront and honest about that, but we are certainly looking to bring that on as fast as we possibly can and make sure that there's nothing that's identified in funding that we're not actually out progressing. Yep.
Well, I'm glad to see there's obviously an attempt to rectify that problem, because I'd hate to think that councils are looking at this money and thinking, well, we might as well spend it somewhere else.
Yep.
If we're going to allocate funding to your section, then you need to make sure that it's well and truly spent. Otherwise, you know, there are a lot of other competing interests.
Certainly, when I spoke earlier to the reserve, which I think is the last committee, there was some discussion around, there's about 90 million which has been collected from developers in that space, which actually flows. That actually flows, as I said earlier, directly into this program. When they come on board, I believe there will be greater costs for us in regards to the land acquisitions based on that pricing. But by way of example, Gilmore Road, we are only waiting on the land that's funded, not this year, but over the next 3 years. When that land comes across, and I would hopefully be in this year, we will look to progress that to construction now, and I'll be looking to do some adjustments and actually bring forward some of that funding and draw that actually out of the reserve at that stage. So there will be some further work done in that regard.
We'll be watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr
I
Mayor.
like it when you pay attention.
Councillor Bradley?
Thank you, through the chair. Daryl, I really appreciate this presentation. Thank you so much. I was curious about the Compton Road, particularly bikeway, because that's been a long time in the making.
Yes.
So just to clarify, you've got state funding for
The
that?
state has come back and committed their 50% funding at the increased amount to cover the extra extent on the bridge. We have been out to the market previously and received prices. I just don't know off the cuff whether we need to go back and reconfirm them with the market or whether we can actually proceed. But I can come back to you and advise you on
Okay.
that. But we would be looking to progress that soon.
And I just want to flag with councillors, I pushed and pushed to have that Daisy Hill cycleway included when that was part of Division 1, which it no longer is. But it took a long time before it came up, a good 10 years. So just that gives you an idea of how long it takes. Is it possible, Daryl, to find out or have it sent to us a list of future cycleways and when they're planned on being delivered or projected to be delivered? Obviously, you seek external funding for some of them.
We do, and RIP actually do that piece of work. They make submission to the state government to receive 50-50 funding. So there was two projects which are actually in the PIA area in that cycleway, and Daisy Hill was one. There was one other, and I can't think of what it was. I think it might have been maybe the one near on the service road at Mount Lindsay Highway at the Parkridge Shopping Centre, I think might have been on that list as well. The others are directly taken from our planning for cycleway, and there's an annual submission made to the state government for 50-50 funding to be able to progress cycleways. I can certainly talk to Kamal and his team to provide you advice on which are the ones that we've actually made application on at this stage. I don't think we have any others that are approved with 50-50 funding at this point.
Okay, I'll take it offline, but I suppose there is an objective for me asking this question, so
Right.
I'll take it offline.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilcox?
Thank you. Through the chair, did you just say that the next committee round you'll be discussing the Greenbank Transport Study?
I will look to actually book a separate briefing for that rather than bring that to a council committee. It's probably not appropriate for this forum.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it and hearing when you propose the Division 11 road network will be upgraded with a status of a timeline with years attached to it, because as you say in this one, Teviot Road from Middle Road to Crowson Lanes 2024-2025. So it'll be interesting to see what you come back with the Greenbank Transport Study. Thanks.
Thank you. There being no other questions from councillors, is there a mover for the motion that will be displayed on the screen? Councillor Bradley, is there a seconder? Councillor Bannon, all those in favour? That's been unanimously carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any general business for the manager? Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you for your report. My question relates to water infrastructure, drainage, curbing and channelling, and upgrades to Story Road and Logan Village. We met not so long ago and actually had a discussion around this. And councillors, just for those of you who weren't in the last term, the previous council actually dedicated additional funding over 3 years to help us move more quickly through some of the curbing and channelling projects that had been sitting in abeyance for quite some time. And I waited very patiently for my turn and learned that my ranking was somewhere around number 10 some 4 years ago. So I chased up where we're at, and my ranking, if I'm lucky, would be at number 10 at the moment. So regrettably, despite allocating additional funds, greater needs have come forward and these projects are still languishing. So the reason I raised this today is I respect that there are differing needs across the city, but I'm at an impasse because I don't know how to move forward with regard to the issues that I've raised with officers offline, and I'm still awaiting further information. I was to understand that there may be some state government funding that may be available for us to address that section of road. I'm still waiting advice with regard to that. We've held our developers to account in that area who've provided their sections of road upgrades, drainage and curbing and channelling, and I'm still awaiting a response from council officers, so it would be appreciated if we could chase that up. I have a meeting with the state member very soon, and this is on my agenda to discuss this with him.
Mr Manager?
It is on. So I undertook after our last meeting to actually have a meeting with RIP jointly. We've held that meeting and the traffic engineers will come back and talk to you about that location. One of the items which you raised was for us to actually do some review on whether there was a change in the priority as a result of that development works further to the north. I've had feedback from our transport planning area that they've revisited that and it won't change that priority. It's sitting, as you're aware, currently at about that 10-year mark. There will probably be some further discussion, I guess, around that program as we run into next year's budget from our perspective. Yep.
And where are we at with the state government funding that may be potentially available given that it is a school precinct?
The traffic engineers will come back and talk to you about that. I'm not directly involved in that, I'm sorry.
Okay, I recognise that residents are consistently writing and complaining regarding the traffic issues in there. My challenge is that as the area councillor, I cannot see a way forward other than, you know, budget enhancements, which we put forward several years ago, and yet my place in the queue or my community's place in the queue remains stable at 10 years out, and it was 10 years out 4 years ago. So it would be a hard sell for me to support a future budget enhancement for curbing and channelling if my projects don't move up the list.
You, Madam Chair. So the program that we're talking about is that Local Roads Curb and Channel and Minor Drainage program. It was originally created, I think, 3 years ago. It was created with an annual allocation of approximately $2 million. Council, in its budget considerations the subsequent year after that, actually increased that funding amount from $2 million up to $5 million for a period of 3 years. This year will be the third year, I believe, of that elevated funding at $5 million. After that, as it stands in Compares without some change, that will actually revert back to the $2 million program. That funding allocation over that period of time obviously is what we're looking at when we're talking about that duration. In terms of change, I believe there's only been one SOI actually adopted for that program. I don't think we've actually changed the priority of any of those programs in the interim. But yeah, there is, I guess I'm suggesting that there probably is a reason to warrant a report coming back reviewing that program, given the fact that we will be at the end of that elevated period that council put in, and an opportunity to review whether that remains or changes going forward.
I guess my concern, and I'll wrap it up, is that we're seeing a great amount of funding going, as it should, into major infrastructure across the city. But my concern is, as the administrator would have described them, these rats and mice projects simply aren't on any programs. And when I inquire about whether local infrastructure funding from our LIP programs would be eligible to support these, they fall through the cracks here too. So how can we actually find a mechanism for managing these kinds of projects? I'm sure this isn't the only one.
Mr Director?
Through the Chair, yes. We're currently preparing a briefing note on the statements of intent for all of the roads programs, so we'll be briefing with Council in the next few weeks in terms of the statement of intent across all categories of roads.
So Logan Village Story Road would feature as part of that statement of intent?
But it's currently in the statement of intent, so we'll just bring to council as an update on where we're at with all of the statements of intent, so that you can see the current status, and I guess from the council's perspective can review their priorities.
Okay, thank you, and I'll await further advice regarding the information I require for the state. If you could please follow that up, Darryl, I'd be grateful.
Thanks, councillor Karansky. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, I welcome that report because the only road that was listed in Division 1 was 30 years away from being done for curb and channelling. So I very much look forward to that.
Do any other councillors have any general business for the delivery manager? There being none, thank you very much, Mr. Riley. We appreciate you coming along today. I note that due to social distancing restrictions, not all managers or staff could attend today. That being said, does anyone have any general business for the Director of Road and Water Infrastructure? Lucky for you, it's me. So, Mr. Director, can I just ask the question? At a previous infrastructure meeting, we requested an update on divisional works by division for each councillor for road and water. I'm just wondering whether that's going to be delivered this month to each councillor.
Yes, we'll put some reports together and get them to council. We'll bring them back as we agreed that we would bring back reports to committee to provide regular updates on progress. So we will certainly put those reports together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. No one else has any business for the Director today? Right, that being said, that completes our agenda for today. I declare the City Infrastructure Committee meeting of 8 September 2020 concluded at 10:39 a.m. The Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee meeting will commence in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.